if you look through or, hear stories of like saints and sainthoods and how saints became saints and these supernatural, right? These outside of the understanding of our natural world.
Yep.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Every, religion is going to have some form of these supernatural experiences.
Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation.
What is up, friends? It is leowt here. I'm playing this little game today with my computer because usually it makes me live before it pops up on my screen, and I didn't want a long period of awkwardness. So I am leowt, and this is Conversations, and we are here to chat about an ever so interesting conversation that goes beyond binary spirituality, and we're actually going to be talking about the intersection of Christianity and tarot. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably thought of tarot and then instantly were like, yep, going to hell if I touch this. And so, as a recent development in my faith, I've realized that much like my own gender, things are not binary. They're not always either or. As a matter of fact, they're very infrequently either or. And so I happened to find a local expert, rock star, tarot reader, intellectual, spiritual guru. I don't know. Oh, actually, I heard that guru was not good to use because it was demeaning for people. Anyways, I apologize for my mistake. I'm always trying to be less privileged or to acknowledge my privilege. But this is my friend Elizabeth. And without me rambling anymore about white privilege, I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Whitacre. I am of Divination Station Tarot. I'm a tarot reader and intuitive life coach. Always studying, always learning myself how to deconstruct my privilege, deconstruct colonialist views in spirituality, in witchcraft, in tarot, any of those things. So that is something that I always strive for as well. So again, we're going to make mistakes, and it's always about learning and disseminating in a gentle way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I did an interview a couple weeks back with a friend I've met from Buffalo. His name's Alexander Wright, and he runs Legacy Farms in Franklinville and also the African-American Co-op. And our whole conversation, we didn't have a set definite direction for it, but we ended up talking about how the idea of privilege is not innately bad, but hoarding privilege is, right? And so if we all used our privilege, we'd be in a better spot. So that's a brief recap of my previous episode at any rate. If you're watching and you want to find that, please see me on YouTube or Apple Podcast.
Awesome.
So let's talk though, Christianity and tarot. Like I said, when I was growing up, man, Harry Potter was a no-no. Power Rangers were a no-no. There was no way we were having a conversation about tarot. So tell me, I was actually really interested that you had an immediate reaction about the intersection of Christianity and tarot. Tell me a little bit about that and maybe how you got here.
Sure. So a little bit about my background and spirituality, religion, all of that. I pretty much say I was raised half-ass Methodist.
I love it.
As in, went occasionally with my dad, but nothing really jived, nothing really sat with me. My mom was raised Catholic. My grandparents were Catholic. So they had that kind of ancestral from their family. They were Catholic from Eastern Europe.
Yeah. Almost like it's as much as a religion, it's part of the cultural background as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't really grow up too attached to any set belief system.
Okay.
And being a teen in the 90s, the craft, all of that. So that kind of got me on the witchcraft path, but it was all kind of Wicca, which is just as set and dogmatic as something like Catholicism. So
Interesting.
yeah, so that didn't really settle in with me because of that.
Yeah.
I like the pomp and the circumstance and the presentation, the visuals, and how it feels and sounds and all of those sensory things. But for as a personal practice, that was it. I couldn't practice it.
Right. Right.
So I found tarot and other forms of divination appealing because it's a way to, call on your spirit guides, call on your guardian angels, source. And source, capital S, is kind of used in spiritual terms to encompass whatever it is.
Okay. In a similar vein, I will be drawn to using the word spirit with a capital S, right?
Yes,
That kind of that amorphous thing that we're all talking around, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So for me, it was a way to kind of pull that down, kind of receive the message, synthesize it, and get it out in a way that people can understand. Tarot is a tool of divination. I do use the kind of pictures and the systems as much as I use my intuition.
Okay, cool.
So that's kind of how I got into it. And I always had a tarot deck with me. I still have the same decks that I had when I, was a teen. Actually, this one I've had for over 20 years.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I got to it. I would pull them out here and there. And over the past probably 6 or 7 years, I've been really studying more and then started my own business with it probably coming on to 3 years ago. So
awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I think part of what intrigues me about tarot, right? And also, I'm kind of like learning about Wicca, witchcraft and stuff like that as well, which hopefully for those of you watching, that'll be coming up on a forthcoming episode. So keep your eyes peeled. But for me as a person, right, I've had some experiences in my life that led me to believe that in fact there was a spiritual realm. That was always couched within my understanding of Christendom. But this weird thing has happened where, sometimes Christendom is bullshit. And I'm going to say that. And I've come to my own understandings of that through immense theological study. So don't step to me. No, not just you, but like anybody.
Oh, yeah.
I'll chat with you, but you're not going to persuade me any different because I've done the work and I got the letters and degrees. But I also, while I felt this deconstruction of my view of Christendom, I still am a spiritually minded person. And when I say spiritually minded, I mean sensitive. Like I can feel things and tell things and know things on an almost instinctual level. And so that evidence made me believe there was something more.
So that's part of it. It's developing the clairs in mediumship circles. So the claircognitions, just knowing, you just know.
Okay.
Clairaudio.
Okay.
You hear things.
Okay.
You can have clair, like olfactory, tasting, sensation, knowing, all of those things.
And what's that term clair mean?
So think like clairaudio. It's coming through from somewhere.
Got you. Okay, cool.
So
different language or
clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance.
So think clairvoyance is kind of
got it.
A more
like a prefix.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
cool,
a prefix for like knowing, seeing, tasting, smelling, hearing from beyond our known physical realm.
Right. Beyond those five senses we have.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I've always felt them. And that's one of the biggest things that keeps me firmly in like the theist or agnostic camp. I've had some awful experiences with Christendom that could have pushed me away, but this actual experience I had is what kept me. And that's why I think I'm really interested to hear more about, your expert thoughts on the intersection of Christianity and tarot.
So when I think of that, I think of, what Christianity is in its essence. I mean, if you look through or, hear stories of like saints and sainthoods and how saints became saints and
Mhm.
these supernatural, right? These outside of the understanding of our natural world,
Yep.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Every, religion is going to have some form of these supernatural experiences.
Mhm.
And again, there's different takes, and throughout, throughout history, the opening of every essay ever,
Right,
um,
right.
you're gonna have, historical and like Joan of Arc just came to me, right?
Mhm.
So, Joan of Arc, this, she supposedly heard voices that allowed her to lead her, troop into battle, and, her and overcome obstacles.
Mhm.
And I mean, psychology aside,
Right, right.
um,
I'm not anti-psychology, by the way. Like,
right. It's
I think there's a
there's
very big difference between like schizophrenia and people discerning something.
Yes. So, and we'll never know,
Yeah,
right? With
right,
with someone like her, we'll never know.
right.
So, there's instances of, people hearing things and going for that and it inspired her to, lead her troops.
Yeah. There's actually, now that you're saying that example of Joan of Arc, I'm being hit with like a myriad of other examples
Mhm.
because I took a class on church history or
Yeah.
history of the church. What it's something of that. Sorry, I hope my professor isn't watching. I love the class though. Intro to church history, right? And there's so many stories along the way. What you could easily interpret like prophets in the Hebrew
Yes.
Bible. You could include prophets in the New Testament, and then you have kind of these outliers like Christian mystics. There were people who got visions, there were people who got sensations, there were people who locked themselves in a room for 35 years to just receive those visions and interpretations and devote their lives to them. I mean, Constantine had a vision.
Right.
And,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So there's definitely, now that you're saying this, I'm like, duh, Leo, you're dumb. There's a
It-
massive amount of evidence of this sort of connection.
and again, it changes with the times, right?
Mhm,
How
mhm.
things are viewed.
Yep.
Things like that were looked at with reverence
Mhm.
in the past, and other times they've been looked at as, tools of assassination.
Yeah, right. Like they're going to burn you at the stake or they're going to worship you. You got a 50-50 chance.
Right, and it all just depends on where the church is at, where
Right.
culture is at.
Right, right.
So tarot itself came into being, and there were so the history of tarot, if you read 5 different books, you're going to get like 5 different little snippets about it.
Mhm,
So I'm
mhm.
going to try to include a bunch here.
Okay.
um they were scenes of the Bible.
Mhm.
So, and they kind of, it was like a traveling card by card
Mm.
telling of stories.
Okay.
And that kind of morphed. The Visconti family in Italy actually was one of the first to have the major arcana, which are the first 22 cards, the big ones.
Okay.
And those cards were hand painted, hand illuminated, hand gold, the gold leaf,
Yep.
yep, of their family.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of the first known assembled
Mhm.
decks.
Okay.
They were used to play card games, Tarachi.
Okay.
They were used, one of the stories is they came from Egypt and held Egyptian mysticism, and they made their way west.
Mhm.
And the Romani people, there's a key factor with the Romani people.
Mhm.
And of course they have been said to be descendant from these Egyptian mystics.
Okay.
And they used tarot, and
Okay.
that was one of the ways that they would basically live.
Mhm.
So it was used to divine. They would tell fortunes with them.
Okay.
And at different times, the Tarot de Marseille was one of the first decks.
Okay.
So this deck is a little bit more, the art's a little bit simpler.
Okay.
Okay. the symbols and the symbology are recognizable.
Yeah. Yeah.
This deck uses color
Okay.
for symbols. So the reds, the blues, the golds, and that the language of color, has been used again in every culture. Red is passion, and depending on the culture. So this was one of the first decks. And I pulled, so there's 3 main systems, I guess.
Okay.
So that one's Tarot de Marseille.
Okay.
Originated in Italy and then to France and kind of morphed into this deck.
Okay.
Rider-Waite-Smith, it's probably the most kind of typical that we think of.
Yeah, that would be very familiar.
Yeah, if you see tarot in a movie, it's probably this one.
Okay.
And that was based on Arthur Waite, who was a Hermetic thinker.
Okay.
So he followed Hermetic traditions.
Okay.
Golden Order of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn specifically.
Can you break that down for people who might not know what Hermetic means?
Absolutely. So Hermetic it's studying, it's pulling within, it is studying of esoteric knowledge, bringing in ancient streams of knowledge and thinking about it and talking about it.
So kind of, associated with the word hermit, right?
Hermit,
so like
yes,
looking inward,
Yep.
studying inward, ruminating within yourself. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it correctly.
Yes.
and that
Thank you.
really helpful.
Thank you for, I'll back anything up and it's good practice for me to be able to define.
Right.
So, and it was illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith.
Okay.
And I like to throw that in because she didn't get any credit when she was alive.
Get it now.
Throw that in.
Yep.
So this is one of the probably most recognizable.
Okay.
The other system is going to be the Thoth system or Thoth system.
Okay.
And this is kind of a mixture of Hebrew.
Okay.
So Jewish mysticism.
Okay.
Which is a whole nother.
Jewish mysticism is so cool.
It's a whole nother.
I've been working on getting someone on to talk about that actually. So
that is awesome. And there is so much to say about that.
Yeah.
So with the tree of life and Kether, and each spot of the tree of life is represented by cards, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
So
it's really cool.
In this deck, each card has a
Hebrew letter.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and this was put forth by Aleister Crowley.
Okay.
And I'm sure, anybody that studies the occult or religious studies, cult studies, anything like that, pop culture even. Aleister Crowley is probably one of the top names to kind of to open that door to deep dive.
Yeah. So Aleister Crowley, if I'm remembering correctly, because the name is very much ringing a bell, is connected with a branch of Satanism, or just help me define.
Yes.
Right?
So he called himself the Great Beast.
Okay.
So it was hedonism more than Satanism.
Okay.
Satanism as, Church of Satan or, any of those iterations came later.
That's what I thought. I was pretty sure there was a distinction between Aleister Crowley and the Church of Satan. There was a difference.
So, but he did come from the Order of the Golden Dawn, which also William Yeats was a part of. Like all of these big names, Oscar Wilde, like all of these names were part of these societies.
Okay, so kind of like secret societies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he pulled away because it was just whatever.
Yeah.
They had wizard battles and like legit wizard battles. And so he set out, like he made this system. He pulled in the traditional tarot imagery, brought in Jewish mysticism, brought in astrology. So it's a really dense deck, meaning there's a lot of levels to it.
Right.
I don't personally agree with some of the things that Crowley did as a human.
Okay.
And his legacy, if you want to call it that, does kind of live on in the, he didn't create it. He
Popularized, maybe.
propelled, yes. The OTO, Order Templi Orientis.
Okay.
Again, it's another secret society, ritual magic, high magic.
Okay.
But he put out this system.
Was he kind of a drunk person? Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he was misogynistic. He was he liked to refer to himself as the Great Beast. He gave himself that name.
And he like embodied that.
And embodied that in
Okay.
any way, shape, or form. So it was
Okay.
basically like edgelord. He was
Yeah.
basically
So just unfettered
yes.
hedonism, pleasure with no recourse. No. Okay. Once again, these are all things
Yep.
that could be
Yep.
whole conversations. So those are the three main systems of tarot.
Yep.
Does that mean, is there different kind of rules that go with them? Is there different cards? Like, what's the difference?
So, and I pulled a few just to kind of give examples. And the ones I wanted to pull on were the Hierophant,
Okay.
otherwise known as the Pope. So
Yeah.
again, we have that. You're like,
I think I have one in my office.
yes. So that is the I put them somewhere. Of course I did. So those are the, oh yeah. So this is the original.
Okay.
So this is actually called the Pope.
Okay.
So as a card, I'll try to get that all in there.
Yeah.
The Hierophant or the Pope is card number 5.
Okay.
5 numerologically brings in a change, a transformation.
Okay.
So in the major arcana, which is called the Fool's Journey, you start off and you take steps in the journey.
Okay.
So each card of the major arcana is a step on that journey.
Okay.
So by the time, think basically the Fool is kind of creation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's that taking that leap of faith.
Okay.
It is starting on the journey.
Okay.
Then you manifest the journey. You create as you go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to put things in order. So the Pope follows the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pope brings, so we have these divine active and receptive energies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to the Pope, who brings higher levels of thinking to society.
Mm-hmm.
Usually pictured in front of 2 accolades or students.
Okay.
So here is the Rider-Waite-Smith.
Okay.
So, you can see in this imagery,
Mm-hmm.
there is very clear Christian imagery.
Very clear. Yeah.
Yeah, like you cannot deny that.
Mm-hmm.
So the way he's even holding his hand
Yeah. Yeah.
is, communing. The idea is he communes with spirit,
Mm-hmm.
brings the information down, and gets it to the masses.
And then disseminates it. Yeah.
Yes. So when this figure shows up in a reading,
Mm-hmm.
it is all about it's learning
Mm-hmm.
and teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about tarot, right? It can be this or that. If it shows up, it can be religion, spirituality, coming into that realization.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 is a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to change what's happened beforehand.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to me that, like you said, that it's actually, you said that the Aleister Crowley deck was a pretty dense deck in terms of imagery, but it seems like there's a lot of imagery
Yes.
in the cards, and it's not just one thing. Like there's a historical connection, there's a chromatic connection, there's like all sorts of different, there's a numerology connection, there's the Jewish mysticism piece. So there's really actually a lot going on in the decks, right?
Yes.
Right.
So when you look, and even, using this deck for as long as I have, there are still things that will pop up.
Mm-hmm.
Or when I'm doing, a reading, or I'm having a kind of an open tarot chat roundtable with people. People that have never read will sit down and be like, oh, that thing right there. And I'll be like, right.
Right.
There. And so, here we have the keys.
Yeah.
Keys to heaven. They are keys to the heaven, keys of knowledge. And if depending on your background, you're going to see different things. Someone that follows any of the chthonic traditions are going to look at that, and chthonic is of the underworld.
Okay. I was just going to ask you, look at you,
yes.
You're already on it.
So Hecate, a lot of people follow Hecate. They're going to see keys, and they're going to think her influence and inspiration, and the fact that the Pope is wearing red. And you can look at the different colors. There's red flowers, there's blue flowers.
There's also of note, because I keep thinking, I'm actually thinking about 7,000 things right now.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about the fact that if you look, something that I've learned as I grew beyond evangelicalism and I grew into a liturgical setting of churches, I learned, I always thought I was supposed to be a pastor, but I never knew what it meant to be a priest, right? So there's some nuances there. And there's actually specific robes that the priests wear, specific colors for specific times of the year,
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right. And here is the Hierophant in the Thoth deck.
Okay.
So here, there's so much.
Yeah. And then this is the one with the Jewish connection.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
Oh man. Is that a yod? I think that's a yod.
Yes. They are.
I remembered something from Hebrew class.
So, and those are actually show up in quite a few different cards.
Okay.
They'll show up in I just passed one, in like the aces.
Okay.
They'll show up in the tower. And it's, again, if a reader knows what that is, it adds whole other levels to that card.
Yeah, it sure does.
So if you know what that is and you see, okay, well, there's just energy.
Right.
Bursting.
Right.
So yes, that is Yod.
You know what's so interesting to me is that liturgical churches, for those of you who don't know what liturgical is, my turn to explain. So evangelical is not a denomination. My friend Christy said she did not like Hebrew class. Hebrew is hard, bro. That's so funny, Christy. I just saw that. It's so interesting to me in terms of symbols, right? That the liturgical church really embraces symbols, whereas evangelicalism kind of disavows them. Evangelical, for those of you who are watching, is not a denomination. It's actually a culture. There's some really great research coming out about evangelicalism as a culture. I emailed author Kristen Dumais about her book, Jesus and John Wayne, where she outlines the rise of Christian evangelicalism in America. So if you want to check that out, you can go back and check that out. But evangelicalism is more of a culture, and they're more of your Jesus is my boyfriend rock songs, and their pastors wearing a button down or a t-shirt.
Okay.
That's kind of evangelical. It's a branch of Christianity, and it would fall within Protestantism.
Yep.
But also within Protestantism, you have like Lutheran, Episcopal, Presbyterian, those sorts of churches are liturgical. What liturgical means is there's a set program, schedule, calendar, right? Liturgical churches really showed to me the beauty and fullness that you can have from collective symbolism. And what I'm noticing is that tarot in itself is not a religion.
Right.
It's merely, like you said, a tool. And so I think it's interesting that a church that employs tools to display symbolism would try to disavow themselves from tarot, when really it's a similar mechanism being used, right?
Right. And I'll show so the counterpart in a way to the Hierophant or the Pope, high priest in some cases is the high priestess.
Wow, so, you know those evangelicals don't like the women.
I know.
I just made a blanket statement, but
so and in the major arcana, she is first. She is before the Hierophant. So you're going to see her.
Okay.
So she
Yeah.
is here.
Yeah.
She holds, we'll just say, a book for now.
Yeah.
And she is by herself.
Okay.
So in this deck, the Tarot de Marseille, she is La Papesse.
Okay. I was gonna say I was gonna ask if that was French, and that was the first one, correct?
Yep.
Another thing I'm noticing, and I don't want to break your flow of thought, but I did
That's
notice
fine.
that the first two decks that you showed relied heavily on primary colors.
Yes.
It didn't have secondary or tertiary colors from what I've seen. So just curious.
Yes. And that has to do with, again, color symbology.
Yeah.
And really, I don't want to say it's oversimplified, but it's definitely on that very, blue is.
Yeah, it's kind of primal almost, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
In the Rider-Waite-Smith, you're going to see a little bit more variety of colors, but it's still going to like light blue instead of dark blue.
Right.
You're going to see, yellow.
Yeah, still fairly cohesive and tight.
Yes.
In the
yes. And the Thoth deck was also drawn by a woman, Lady Frida Harris. And she really took artistic liberty with shading and hues and just color palettes. So you can easily discern the suits by her color palette.
Okay. I love that there's so many women up in here. Like, yes.
And this is the Rider-Waite-Smith. This is the High Priestess.
Okay.
And I mean, I could sit here, and I have talked for an hour just about her, her symbols. So the B and the J.
I was just going to ask you.
I know. Boaz and Joaquin. The towers, the two towers of the Temple of Solomon. So it brings in it brings in the like keys of Solomon and all of that.
There's a lot of mysticism surrounding that, the Temple of Solomon. For those of you who aren't necessarily aware, there is different temples for different phases of Judaism, not because the faith changed, but because the temple was destroyed. So part of the Hebrew Bible is this recidivism and cyclic nature of Israel being attacked and their temple being destroyed and then it being rebuilt, kind of. And so the Temple of Solomon is one of those specific periods in the Hebrew Bible. So
she is shown in the middle. She is a conduit from the spirit to the physical. So again, there's symbolism here. She's got the equal armed cross. Oh yeah. And does she have the Torah under her robe? Yeah. Okay. All right. So she holds the wisdom. She receives and holds the wisdom. The high priest, his purpose, we'll say, is to go out and deliver. Disseminate it. Okay. Yes. Her position is to hold and hold space. And she will give the wisdom to those who come and seek it. Oh, there's so much there, especially when you talk about the idea of holding space in social justice work and the amount of work, especially by Black women, that is being done, in terms of like holding that wisdom and how strong is the cultural understanding that we should be listening to women and Black women in particular. Absolutely. And I've been expanding my docs to include women of color, witches of color, intersectional gender, inclusive disability inclusivity. So because these are very, very cis het. Yeah, they're dated. They came out of a specific cultural context. Yeah. And I am trying to pull in decks that show more inclusivity.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I was looking for decks online just out of curiosity, and I saw a couple that were, you know, intentionally queer, and Elle actually purchased one that is written by and for women of color, and it came with a journal that you can use to track your progress as you learn. She actually got it at Barnes and Noble, which was random.
Yeah. What deck is it? Of course, I have.
I want to say it was the Black Girl Witches, but
Okay.
I will
Yeah.
message you later.
And absolutely. And that is, you know, a whole thing of, you know, women of color
Mhm.
and individuals of color stepping into power in these circles.
Absolutely.
And this is a whole nother like hours of conversation, but, and you're going to see a certain faction of light workers or spirit workers
Mhm.
that are not receptive to that.
Ooh. So what you're saying is racism transcends category.
Yes.
That's deep. That's real deep.
It really does. It's whitewashing. It is tone deafness as far as, you know, hey, could you not use these words?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Could you not do this? This is not your practice.
Yeah.
Um,
You know what's so interesting to me? That when I think of cultures that just embody spirituality, unbridled spirituality, I almost always think of like African-based cultures, particularly more like kind of tribal primal
Mhm.
cultures. Like there's a connection of spirituality there
Yeah.
with African individuals, and I understand Africa is a continent. I'm speaking of people
It's,
from the continent. I'm not speaking
well,
of just the country.
the African, I always say this word wrong because it's one of those things that I've read before I heard it.
Diaspora?
Yes.
Got you. I got you.
Thank you. Those cultures, the Yoruba, you know, the Orishas of the Yoruba are so connected
Mhm.
to the culture and to the land, the land, you
Mhm.
know, Yamaya and the ocean. And, you know, she is not just, you know, say goddess of, she is
Right.
the
Right.
ocean.
Right.
And that is like, I got goosebumps like when I said that.
Yes.
So
This is the stuff that happens that makes me believe there's
yes.
something physically happening, or there's something
Yes.
happening, you know. I just think it's so interesting that I find such vibrancy and spiritual depth in you know, African diaspora like religions, and Caribbean religions, right?
Yes.
Like Santeria and stuff
Yes.
in
Oh
Puerto
yeah.
Rico. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on them, please hear me on this, but when I encounter that, I get that same feeling in my gut that I get in a really intense worship service. But so
Yeah.
much of colonization has attempted to put white religion there. And I don't even put spirituality there, because I feel like a lot of what I see amongst white people, which admittedly white is an amalgamation, white does not exist, right? But people of European descent in particular, I don't see that depth of religion, of fervor that makes it feel more spiritual than religious to me. So I just think that's really interesting. Like it went, especially when we're talking about people of color and women of color, and ableism and all of those things being called out, right?
Mhm.
It would seem that a lot of spiritual communities want to distance themselves from backgrounds that are innately spiritual, known for their spirituality.
And when I encountered that, I'll say within the past year,
Yeah.
right? When I've come up against that and encountered it,
Mhm.
I I found it a little bit confusing
Mhm.
and absolutely off-putting
Mhm.
because, you know, my background and anybody that I've encountered really either didn't bring it out, no, it didn't come up.
Mhm.
But in the past year, there have definitely been a few lines drawn,
Mhm.
and people have taken a stand one way or another.
That's awesome. I mean,
There,
I'm glad that it's coming to a conversational head.
yes,
You know?
like there are groups on Facebook, which is against white supremacy.
Mhm.
There's one that's called like it sounds like your religion or spirituality is, I can't remember what the what the name of it was, and they removed me from the group. And I don't know if it's because I didn't or appropriation. It sounds like your religion is spiritual, is cultural appropriation. And I don't know if it's because I did not like engage enough.
Right.
Like there's another group.
Oh, sorry. I did not mean to interrupt you.
It's okay. There's another one like actively like dismantling colonialism in witchcraft and spiritual circles. So there's so much about that.
Would you do us all a favor and drop some links in the comment section at some point?
Absolutely. I will absolutely. So I'll just a little bit here. I am a tarot reader. I'm also an intuitive life coach. I do both kind of at the same time. I use tarot as a personal reflective tool. I will use it as a tool to help my clients kind of peel away like ego and really get to the bottom of it. And tarot is a beautiful language to do that in.
Right.
It's a visual.
I have to ask you, so I'm going to ask you to drop all of your information in just a second, but we did have a question come in. I can't always keep track of questions, but I have one from a new friend I've made online, Gareth. They said symbolism has increasingly interested them. Do you see the religious scriptures of different religions and tarot as a similar door or gateway?
Absolutely.
Okay.
To me, like the way and this is just a glimpse into my head. I kind of look at it as, source or spirit is kind of this realm, and we all pull from the same realm. There's different doors that lead into this hallway, and wherever you come through that door is the same source.
I am developing a similar systematic theology, which is actually a terrible word for it because systematic theology is so rigorous, but I'm developing an understanding of theism that very much aligns with that. There will be books to come, let's just say.
Yes.
I didn't write one yet, but I am actively learning that. So
it's, to use a kind of noticeable or a recognizable phrase, the collective consciousness, Jung is problematic in his own ways. But that's, in my view, collective conscious is where our stories as people come from. And when they kind of come down to us, they come out in different ways depending on your culture. So parallel myths, right?
Yes.
And it's
I just got really excited. I'm sorry.
So it's all of this like bank of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we get there by different doors sometimes, but
absolutely. You know what's so interesting is a couple weeks ago when I was in Puerto Rico, I actually did an interview with a friend of mine who graduated from the same conservative evangelical college that I went to. And he's now a pastor in the United Church of Christ, which is much more open and affirming than the denomination of school we came from. But he's preaching a series on the Gnostic Gospels. So he's preaching on non-canonized books of the Bible. I'm just going to call them what they are, right? And his way into Gnosticism was the study of Jung. So apparently I need to study Jung more because he's all up in this, bitch.
Yes. He's a little better than Freud as far as, some of his views, but still very problematic.
Problematic in some ways.
Yes.
But he started some conversations that are still going.
Exactly. And that cannot be denied. But yes. So to answer that question, yes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I promised that I would send you out to your 6 p.m. appointment on time.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to have to slide in a request that we maybe do another conversation because it seems like there's so much more we could talk about.
Absolutely.
So I'll be in your DMs about that.
Sure. Love it.
Before we go, could you do me a favor and could you just shout out absolutely everywhere people can support you or connect with you?
Yes. So I am Divination Station on Facebook. You can find me at Divination Station Tarot. I am also on YouTube.
Okay.
So I have about 55 videos of me talking about tarot.
I love it.
Yes. I'm also on Patreon. I am developing content for that a little bit more. That's my focus.
Okay.
And with that, you get tarot readings every month. You get access to my Discord channel, exclusive videos. I do lunar chats, so new moon, full moon, bringing everything together with that.
Cool.
But Divination Station Tarot is a great place to start.
All right.
You can find me on there.
All right, perfect. For everybody who is watching, I will make sure that that information is
Yes.
placed in the show notes in podcast form and in the comments or descriptions here and on YouTube for the videos. So if you didn't know that, friends, we exist all over the place. We do live videos definitely every Sunday, but I've just been getting too much interesting stuff to talk about, so I started doing a midweek video also.
Love it.
So we exist live on Facebook. You probably know, but if not, you can find us under Conversations Official as our main page. And then our community discussion happens in the Conversations Official Facebook group. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Discord. And all of those links can be found at conversationsofficial.com. Find them. Also, I have one request of everybody who's listening. If you could please do me a solid, it would amazingly help out Conversations. If you can go onto the YouTube or one of our podcast platforms and let it play all night while you sleep. You can mute me. It doesn't matter. But if you can like and subscribe and stream me, those streams go a very long way into monetization, which if this can monetize, I can do more and deeper and better. And I would like to move into some one-on-one, just like spiritual counseling as well. So, but monetization will allow me to do those things. So please check out conversationsofficial.com. Please stream Conversations on any platform you can, particularly YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Elizabeth, you are the bomb. Oh, look at you. You are on it.
Yep. I'm like, let me do this right now.
I've never had
so
someone
much.
do it while they're on the video. I love that so much. Elizabeth, you're a doll. I really felt really connected with you, and I cannot wait to chat more. Thank you so much for coming on, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Hey, everybody.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.